Hi everybody, it's Kylie, a teacher at Tracy Aviary, and I am so excited to be here talking with you. I'm going to ask you a very special question. Do you know what your watershed address is? Now, I didn't know my watershed address when I first moved here to Utah, so it really helps to look at a map, and I have one here for you to see. There are lots and lots of different watersheds here in our Salt Lake Valley. And a watershed is just all of the places that water touches, from the time that it drops out of the sky to the time that it collects in a larger body of water, like the Great Salt Lake right here outside of town. So you might live in any of these awesome watersheds, but the cool thing about them is that all of the watersheds that belong to creeks run into the Jordan River watershed, which runs into the Great Salt Lake, our collection point. So everything is connected. Here at Tracy Aviary, we are in the Jordan watershed right here with this black dot. And it's a really cool place because it's right at the end of Emigration Creek watershed and Red Butte watershed. And so we have this really cool confluence. You can see the water actually coming into the watershed and then continuing on to its collection point. So it's not just humans that live in this watershed and share this watershed address. We have lots and lots of beautiful birds that share it as well. For example, if you live up near the mountains, maybe in Mill Creek, you're next to the Mill Creek Canyon. And in the canyon, if you're next to the water, you might see this bird. This is an American dipper, and I love American dippers. They're so fun to see. They're about the size of a robin, and they hang out next to creeks, and they eat invertebrates like this larva in its mouth here, and they will swim under the water. They look like penguins when they swim under the water looking for all of their food. Now, if like the Tracy Aviary, you live closer to the Jordan River, you definitely know these ducks. These are mallards, and they're probably the most common bird to see in the Jordan River watershed, especially if you're right at the river. Mallards are amazing, and pop quiz, which one is the male and which one is the female? Well, if you said the one with the green head is the male, you would be correct. This is the male mallard, and this is the female mallard. Now think for a minute, why would they look so different from another? It's because they have very different things that they do when it's time for breeding and laying eggs. The male mallard is very flashy because he has to attract a mate. That's his job. And the female is a little more dusty colored, maybe a little more boring, but her job is to camouflage the eggs once she lays them. And so her job is very important and tied to these kind of dustier colors. And of course, all of these watersheds run down to our collection point, the Salt Lake, and you'll find one of my very favorite birds in all of Utah there. This is an American avocet. And every time I show this picture to kids in a classroom, they go, "Ah, oh, wow." And it's because they're just an elegant and beautiful bird. So first thing that you'll notice probably is those really long legs. And those long legs are perfect for living in a wetland like the ones around the Great Salt Lake. They help you to get down into the mud and all the gooey parts of the lake and the wetlands without getting your beautiful plumage dirty. And you'll notice that their beak curves up, not down like most birds. And that helps them when they're trying to swish through the shallows searching for invertebrates like shrimp to eat. One of my favorite things about them is that they are super migrators. They will migrate from here and even further north down into Mexico for the winter season. And you'll know that it's time for them to migrate because their beautiful rusty red heads will turn silver. And they'll be silver for the whole winter period. And then when they return here, they will have this beautiful rusty red again. So all of these beautiful birds share our watershed with us, and they use the same water that we use. So in the next part of this video, we're going to be cracking open my Enviroscape. and seeing how humans use the watershed that we're all a part of. Hey everyone, welcome to the Enviroscape. This is one of my favorite things about working at Tracy Aviary is that I get to play with this really cool miniature landscape. So as you look at it, you'll notice that it's a wonderful watershed, a lot like the one that we live in here in Utah. So down here, you'll see this is our collection point for the watershed, the lake. Over here we have a nice forest. Here's a road. Then you see a wonderful little neighborhood, maybe a subdivision. Next to it we have a mall. And of course the ever-present construction. To the right you have the mountain range with a creek running next door. We have a factory and a bridge. And then that factory leads down to the river. Next to the river, we have a farm. We have a little cow taking a nap. We have a field that runs right next to the lake again. So we are going to spend some time in the Enviroscape doing things that people do in watersheds all the time. And what I want you to think as we go through our exercise is, how do the actions of the people that live in this watershed affect the water and the birds that live there too? So let's go ahead and start over here at this cute little farm. So there is a farmer who lives here, and she does a really great job raising her cows and feeding her chickens, and she has this really large piece of land here where she grows carrots. But the carrots every year get eaten by different kinds of bugs, and so she has to take drastic measures to help her carrots. So she puts a lot of different pesticides on her carrots. So here we go. I'm adding some pesticides. Now remember, a pesticide is something that might kill all of the bugs or unwanted things that are affecting your crops or your plants. So to the north of her is this factory. And this is a factory that only makes fidget spinners. They are 5 years behind the time. They're still making fidget spinners. And they have a lot of business, but they also have a lot of garbage. And the best way they can think of to get rid of their garbage is to drip it down their drain. So you see, there goes some of their garbage. I'm going to put a little more in. There we go. Now next door to the factory, remember, we have the mountains. And lots of people love to go to the mountains, and they love to bring their dogs. And sometimes they see signs that say, protected, watershed, please, no dogs. But they think, what's one dog gonna do? So they go hiking instead of listening to the sign. And when they're up there, their dogs poop a lot. And it's not just one dog, because lots of people are up there enjoying the mountains. So we have lots of poop on the mountains. Oh my goodness, that's a lot to clean up, huh? Well, if we go to the other side of the mountains, we have our shopping center. And just imagine all of the people having a great time shopping. They went to Build-A-Bear. They got an orange Julius. They have had so much fun, and then they get ready to leave. And they have some trash that they don't want to take with them in their cars, but they look around in the parking lot and they're like 5 cars away from the nearest trash can. And they think, oh, that's too far away, I have to get home. So they just drop their trash, their litter, on the side of their car so it's in the parking lot. Just like that. Now next to it, we have the ever constant construction site. and they have to build and build and build because there are so many people who live in this watershed. And so they kick up a lot of dust when they're building. Like that. And that's right next to this neighborhood. So this sweet little neighborhood has some really nice neighbors. They all know each other's names and they say hello. And this neighbor right here just got a new car. And they are so proud of this car, they want to learn how to take care of it all by themselves. And so one beautiful sunny afternoon, they are changing the oil in their car, and they get a whole pan of dirty oil out of their car. But then they look down and they're like, what do I do with this dirty oil? Maybe I'll just dump it on the curb and it can go down into the sewer. We'll see what that looks like a little later. And then we have our final neighbor here. This is a sweet family who moved here from Florida, and they do not like the desert, but they have to be here because of their job situation. And they miss all of the tropical plants that they left back home in Florida, so they try to grow them here, and that means they have to put a lot of fertilizer on their lawn to make all of these plants grow that shouldn't grow in Utah. So, just a big picture of all of the things our little watershed village did. Take a minute to hypothesize to yourself what this kind of activity might do to this watershed. We can see some effects already, but what else would happen? Did you hear something? It's a thunderstorm coming, so I'm going to make it rain on our watershed, and I want you at home to make some rain and thunder noises with me as I rain on this watershed. And remember, any water that touches the land in a watershed eventually goes to the collection point, the lake. So here we go, make those thunder noises. So we already have some strange business going on in the watershed. I'm just going to add a little more water up in the creek here so that we can see how the water moves through the watershed. It goes into our river and then collects down into our lake. So it's a bit of a mess here in our watershed now, isn't it? Now take a minute and look at all the things that happened here and consider, if I was a person living in this watershed and this is what my water looked like, would I think that it was safe to drink? And even if I was a person who could get water from different places, not in our watershed, think about all of the birds that live here and all the other wildlife. If I was an American dipper living up in the creek with all of that dog poop in it, if I was a mallard raising chicks in this river that has all of this dirt and slime in it, if I was an avocet looking for shrimp in this lake with all of this runoff in it, would I be a healthy, happy bird? Maybe not, huh? So, what I would love is for you to drop a comment on this video with some things that the people who live here in the Enviroscape might have done differently to help this be a healthy and happy watershed, not just for them, but for the birds and wildlife that live there too.